Today, it's time to tackle the tight end tiers. In this episode of Dyno Construction, we're going to talk tiering up strategy, cross-positional targets, value at each position, and how many of these tight ends we actually think matter. It might get a little fiery. Stick around for all that and more. And welcome into the Dyno Construction Podcast. Excited enough to talk tight ends. There's some really exciting ones at the top, then it gets murky. It's tight end. But before we do that, real quick housekeeping point. For our 500 subscriber winners, we have Nick Bauman 589 and Kay Kluda. We'll be reaching out to you guys in the comments from the previous videos where you've commented, but you guys won our giveaway for 2 roster repairs. So very excited about that. Hit that subscribe button if you have not. And want to throw to you guys, I was not able to, due to family stuff. I got an invite to a live Scott Fishbowl, wasn't able to attend, hoping to get invited back again next year. You guys are in it. Talk to me a little bit about that, guys.
Yeah, just first of all, I want to shout out the whole, Scott Fishbowl, Ryan McDowell, the whole Fantasy Cares organization. This is one of the cooler things to be a part of. Like, I never knew there was this much of a charity aspect to the fantasy community until I started to follow the Scott Fishbowl and things. And I know it's pretty cool. Makes me feel good to be a part of. So shout out to them, and keep doing the awesome stuff you're doing, and we'll keep having a fun tournament.
It's just a lot of fun. The scoring format's really different. It's if you look at scoring last year, 12 of the top 20 scorers were running backs. I mean, you get 2.5 points per reception, points for first down. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. I know some people will even do leagues that are mocking that format, but yeah, no, it's a lot of fun just to kind of change it up because we're so used to pretty much the same format for the most part. So yeah, feeling very grateful to be in that league.
Exciting to watch your live drafts unfold. Fun stuff. Real quick, as we get into this, want to thank David for developing a new graphic. We've been using Tier Maker like, everybody else, but we're putting in a new graphic for our tiers. So please give us some feedback on how you like those. Trying to spice things up, increase that production quality a little bit. I'm gonna have something nicer behind me one of these days, I promise too. We're a low budget podcast, of course. So best thing you can do is hit that subscribe button and help us get up there. Maybe someday we'll actually make enough money to pay for the StreamYard we use for all of this. Right now we're just hemorrhaging money, pushing back our retirement days. You guys know how it is. What's retirement? Anyway, so we have a new graphic, couple housekeeping points on that graphic. We use Dynasty Data Lab for ADP when we're talking about ADP. We are using 1.75 tight end premium for scoring. So if you have different numbers in your head, it could be this guy was higher or lower. So cross-reference based off of that. For our podcast listeners, you should be able to watch the video on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Otherwise, hit us up on Apple or on YouTube if you really want to check the graphic out. We'll try to mention it best as we can. So all that being said, gonna hop into tier 1 tight ends. I think it's pretty straightforward who those guys are. I think all of our audience knows who those guys are. They're the guys we expect to be in play for tight end 1 overall and are young. There's another guy who's obviously in play for tight end 1 overall. We'll talk about him later, but those 2 guys, go ahead and talk to me about them, JP.
Yeah, we have one of the best tight end prospects that we've seen since Kyle Pitts, but this one actually hit in Brock Bowers of the Raiders. And we have Trey McBride after his huge breakout. He was tight end 1 in points per game last year. So he truly broke out as well as a rookie in Brock Bowers, which we've seen a little bit lately. Sam Laporta the year before.
Yeah, these 2 were very close in points per game and total points. But either way, these 2 are beasts. They're both young. They're both, entering their prime, or I don't know, with Bowers, maybe he still has another level to go. That'd be scary to think, but he is just 22 years old. McBride only 25, but got to be thrilled to have either of these 2 in your tight end spot.
I think conventional wisdom on Bowers should be that we'd expect somewhat a regression as far as it can't get much. I mean, Jacoby Myers, great wide receiver 2, not really a wide receiver 1. I think there will be points in his career where we'll have more target competition than he did last year, but yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see if he steps back at all. They added a little bit target competition wise, but not a lot bit. So interesting to see. Want to have some conversation conversations about these guys now. So this tier 1 cash price, when we're talking tight end premium, have it listed as kind of about 2.5 to 3 first. I think I need 3 first if I'm selling one of these guys to even start the conversation. I sold McBride mid startup for 3 future firsts and one I would not take a penny less. Do you guys see a situation you would take less than 3 firsts for one of these guys? They're difference makers.
I mean, I left a little wiggle room there for 2 reasons. First of all, I was just kind of working on the graphic and I never went back to double check the work. But also, like if it's too early first, maybe we can talk, too early first and another sweetener. Then maybe, especially Bowers, but really Bowers and McBride, I think, kind of rival that tier 1 wide receiver price almost. If not, certainly right in that tier 2 wide receiver price. Probably maybe in between the two. I don't know. Somewhere in that neighborhood, though.
Yeah, I think at a non-tight end premium, probably the 2.5 first, maybe you'll see around that price point. But yeah, I definitely need 3 firsts. I mean, if you look at targets last year, they both were at 9 or higher. Justin Jefferson had 9.1, Garrett Wilson 9.1. So yeah, they're right there with the elite wide receivers in terms of targets. And I mean, if you're getting a lot of targets and receptions in tight end premium league, then you're truly one of those big difference makers, and you're really underrated because these guys were outscoring the wide receiver 2 last year in points per game. So they were only behind Jamar Chase if you compare them to wide receivers in our scoring format for tight end premium. So if we're trying to move one of these guys, just looking cross-positionally, guys in a similar value range, you're looking at Bijan and Gibbs at running back. I think that's a pretty fair equivalent if you really need to acquire a running back. A wide receiver, looking at CeeDee Lamb, Malik Neighbors. Maybe we'll go down to like Puka. I think he's right at the top of our tier 2 wide receivers. And for quarterback, you're looking at a guy like Joe Burrow. You're not going to get one of those top 5 dynasty quarterbacks, but you might be able to get Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes, I'd say, probably in that range.
Gotta say, I prefer these guys to Mahomes by a pretty decent margin. I think Hurts is also in the conversation. And if we're looking to tier down, David, what is our strategy at the tight end position?
Yeah, I'll just say real quick. First, QB was hard. I don't think you're going to get Burrow straight up. You might with Bowers, but the next guy down, there's like a decent gap right now between these 5 and QB6, whoever you have, which is kind of weird. But either way, tier down, I guess it depends on how convicted you are on either of these tier 2 players. I think a lot of people are going to have a lot of different opinions. Roughly, you're looking at 2 firsts, though, because I think our next tier is about worth a first. We're talking about 3 first total in price. So you're going to need 2 firsts. Probably one of them is going to have to be good, too.
And tier 2 is one that we had some issues debating on. I think it's a very interesting group of players. We had a lot of issue basically because there's a player in tier 2 with a lot of dynasty value. Scott Connor kind of coins this term ADV, artificial dynasty value. Maybe there's some of that. We've seen some production from him, and a player that I think we all think very well could be the tight end 1 next year. So those 2 players, of course, right here, we have George Kittle and we have Sam Laporta. Age 31, George Kittle. Age 24, Sam Laporta. So David, because we got into it quite a bit, in fact, if the podcast does not release another episode after this one, it's probably because of this conversation and or tier 5-6. But go ahead and talk to us about Kittle and your argument for having him here regardless of age and a later ADP.
Real quick, I think Ray G might have been the one to come up with ADV, but either way, it's a big destination devy thing, and it's a good term to keep in mind too. Artificial dynasty value. It happened. I think Laporta's pretty guilty of that. I know he was tight end 1, but in his rookie season, but even then he was tight end 3 or 4 in points per game. And you look at last year to this year, total points went down from 303 to 219. Points per game 17.9 to 13.7. All of his metrics were down. Targets were down by 40 almost. I just wonder if he's just a guy, but he's being priced as somebody who might be a difference maker. That's kind of how I feel. So I think the combination of Laporta's inflated value in my mind with George Kittle being an actual difference maker at a position where I think there's only 3. Look, if you're not competing George Kittle, you shouldn't value him here. You should get off of him. You should move him for one of the rookies. If you can get a plus for that, that's great. That's what I'd be trying to do. But if you're competing, I don't see a world where you move Kittle for Laporta straight up, especially with a plus though. So that's why for me, I put these 2 in the same tier. But again, obviously if you're not competing, you have to look through it through that lens, and Kittle doesn't belong with Laporta value wise. And I understand that. 6 points per game though, man, that's a huge difference.
Yeah. And I mean, the reason we have Kittle here is because we're a democracy here. And I voted that Kittle probably deserves to be here too, just because, tight ends, there's not many difference makers. We might have 3, 2 within a year, and he just is right in that conversation to be one. Justin, you have a great great argument that the market value is definitely on the Laporta side. But if you're looking at this graphic right now, you're looking at points per game, 6 points per game. That's massive. It's a big gap. 7 years in age is also massive. So I understand if you don't value Kittle here, but I am going to value him here in tight end premium because 19.7 points per game. That's what you're looking at from a guy like Justin Jefferson last year. Actually, I think it's a smidge higher. And he's got a great opportunity this year. I just think with Debo being gone, Ayuk's injury, Kittle's probably the number one tight end target. Or not just tight end target, but the overall target. And we've seen with Brock Purdy specifically that Kittle's been even better. So I just think that he's just too good of a hammer to put him below Laporta. And I agree, David. I wouldn't move Kittle for Laporta if I'm contending right now. If I get a plus to do it, yeah, I'll do it either way.
I'm going to be honest. I think I would bite the bullet and move Kittle for Laporta if I am contending just off of the dynasty value that I'm gaining. Just looking through some trades on dynastydaddy.com, I see Laporta accessing JSN. I see Laporta accessing Travis Hunter. I see Laporta accessing Bucky Irving. And I think that he's drafted around those guys, right? In tight end premium. In a non-tight end premium league, I think my position on this changes pretty drastically because in non-tight end premium, I think that I think I probably agree with having Kittle up in this tier because how much of a difference that makes. But if you just look at where he's being drafted at the 307 to the 606 that Kittle's being drafted, you can tier down from the 3rd to the 6th and get a first in a startup. I know startups and real leagues are different, of course, but I just think it makes me upset having them in the same graphic because of that value difference that they have. It gives me a visceral reaction, to be honest with you. I'm a value above all else guy. And yeah, there's a possibility that Laporta really slides quite a bit. And if you can access JSN or Bucky Irving or get round 3-ish startup value for him, I'm selling in a heartbeat for him. And just because I think that there's a world where you can do that, I don't think it's impossible to do that. You might need to add in like a 2-3 swap to do that, maybe just a second straight up, which I'd be very happy to pay a second to get off of Laporta at this round 3 startup value. I definitely advocate for doing that 10 times out of 10, and then just go plug in Zach Ertz at tight end, anybody at tight end, and get that value. But just the value to me is so drastic.
Yeah, and I mean, you made great points throughout, and whether you agree with putting Kittle in here or not, you should listen to what Justin just said. It's all very actionable. Normally, I agree with you. I'm very much follow the market. Like you just said, Laporta gives you access to way better assets than Kittle does. If you're in an active lead, maybe that does skew things on whether you're willing to trade Kittle for Laporta if you're competing. This is just a unique situation to me. Most positions, you have several players that you can plug in and feel like you're at least not going to be outmatched week to week at any point. Tight end is very different, though. Like I said, there's 3 that I care about. Like, yeah, other guys matter a little bit more than the rest or whatever. But if you don't have Bowers, McBride, or Kittle, you're probably going to be at a disadvantage in the playoffs at that position. Give me the positional advantage. Let's win some money. I don't know. I think tight end is probably the only position where I'm willing to overlook that 3-round difference for the 6 points. That's just so massive to me that I'll take a little hit in value if it's that big of a point advantage and I'm competing.
Yeah, I mean, if it's 3rd round startup ADP, like if you're getting that value for Laporta, I 100% like I definitely see the argument, Justin. But if I'm holding these guys, just if Laporta just has another season like he did this year, I think he's just gonna fall a lot in value, and people are gonna realize how overvalued he is. I just think he's already overvalued. I think we all kind of agree with that. Since you're saying the 307, you would never take him there, but. No, I mean, I think it could have gone either way. I just slightly lean on the Kittle side. But let's look at who we can trade these players for cross-positionally. And at running back, we're looking at guys like Christian McCaffrey, Quinshon Judkins. So these were guys around late first value for rookie picks is what we're looking at. I mean, Judkins was a little bit earlier. So maybe you won't be able to get Judkins. Maybe for Laporta. Maybe that's a point in your favor, Justin. But at wide receiver, we're looking at guys like Rome Odunze, T. Higgins. Quarterback, if you really need a quarterback, you can look at guys like Trevor Lawrence and Jared Goff.
Yeah, I will say this was by far the hardest one to do cross-positional options for because of that large difference in value. I was trying to just go basically by Dynasty Data Lab startup and look for who was around. So this one I did kind of split up, like Judkins kind of more Laporta, CMC probably more Kittle. Quarterback's kind of the same there. Wide receiver, I just went with our tier, Odunze and Higgins we have in the same tier. So it was a weird one, and that did kind of make me reflect on the decision to put Kittle there a little bit more. And like, I don't know, it's weird. It is weird. I admit it.
Yeah. And talking about cash price on these guys, random first, I think it's probably easier to get a random first for Laporta than it is for Kittle. Obviously, you need to get a random first from the right team. And if you trade Kittle to a team, that first possibly becomes less random just inherently. So Kittle's probably more difficult player to liquidate on both of those accounts, right? But definitely agree that it's a first, probably plus for me for Laporta. Ideally, I'm looking for a first and a second, something like that. At least if I am cashing them out, would definitely be very happy taking that random first for Kittle if we are not probably holding for a first. If we are tier up to tier 1, we talked about that before, probably 2 first. And if we're tiering down to tier 3, we're looking for a tier 3 player and a second, possibly a tier 3 player and a second would be tough to get for Kittle. Just kind of depends based off those ADPs. And who are those tier 2 players? Tier 3 players, David.
2 high-end rookies, Tyler Warren, Colston Loveland, and then TJ Hawkinson, who hopefully is going to be back and healthy this year. Played, I think, most of the second half, if not all of it, after recovering from ACL surgery. Did not quite look like himself, but as we know, that first year back, especially when you come back mid-season, typically you're not performing like yourself. So TJ Hawkinson is still at 28 years old. We think he can recover and play like he was playing pre-injury. These 2 rookies, obviously drafted very highly. We think they have a lot of high-end upside. An interesting tier here. While I said only 3 tight ends matter, I think all 3 of these have a chance at mattering by the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, Hawkinson, we've seen some really, really high-end outputs from him before he had that injury that he suffered back in 2023. I mean, he was on tight end 1 pace, I believe, if not tight end 2. So we've seen some really, really strong numbers from him. He might be able to get to tier 2, but I think Kirk Cousins and having really high passing volume, I think that did help. Well, to see JJ McCarthy is a question. If he's the 3rd target on the team, I just think that his upside is kind of limited, whereas Kittle, like, he can be the number 1 target. But, I mean, I don't really see a difference between Loveland and Warren right now. They're kind of like splitting hairs for me. So if you're able to go from one or the other, I mean, I'll take a plus to go from one or the other. I think I've taken Loveland over Warren in the league as well.
I have a pretty strong opinion on the Warren versus Loveland, just based off of the fact that Warren has no target competition comparable to what Loveland has. Obviously, we think Josh Downs is a very solid player. His reception perception profile is great, but I think the competition in Indianapolis, obviously the QB room is a lot worse. The offense is a lot worse, but we also know that tight ends are a great safety blanket typically. We're not even sure that Loveland will be the tight end 1 this season with like absolute regularity over Kmet, a guy who has a lot of NFL experience. They extended. Obviously, he's the tight end of the future there. There's no asking that he will overtake Kmet at some point, I believe, is we'd all agree to that. We believe that strongly. And then you look at just more Burden and, of course, Adunze there. I think I prefer Warren, and it's not super close to me. That being said, I'd certainly tier between the 2 for a plus. I'd go from Warren to Loveland for a plus. And one other additional note, just personal thing, this is what I've done in a league this year. I've had a rookie pick on the clock where I could have taken either of these guys. I'm competing, and I traded that rookie pick to David for TJ Hawkins. On a contending team, it's not really close to me that I prefer Hawkinson over these. I'm not probably, because again, I've said how much I care about value. I'm probably not adding to either of these guys to get Hawkinson, but if I can get Hawkinson for these guys, like I make that choice when I'm contending. I'm not going to pay extra. I'd take that extra instead and go buy Zach Ertz or Mike Gesicki and start that guy probably, and then keep this guy as my tight end in the future. But just want to say real strong lean Hawkinson side when I am.
Yeah, I get that when you're competing. I think I agree. I think I took Igbuka with the pick that that we traded for Hawkinson. I was about to say I took Warren, but I don't think that's accurate. I think that was a different
OSU Homer.
Well, give me all the Ohio State wide receivers, and I'll have a pretty good team. I agree. I think I prefer Warren over Loveland. But like we've been saying, I'll take a plus to either direction. Like for me, a third is enough to move from one to the other on those. Just a little extra. I think they both have pretty big upside. I do like Warren's path to getting more targets early, but like Loveland was the 10th pick in the draft. We've seen Ben Johnson utilize tight ends well in his offenses in the past. So I like both their upsides. I'll take a flyer on either. If either of them are slotted as my starter on a team that I think at least has a chance to compete, I'm probably in the market for a really cheap guy, like you were saying, Justin. Give me Gesicki, give me Henry, maybe give me Goddard or something, whatever. That's fine. And if one of these rookies ends up taking off, they're on my bench. Easy swap. He's my starter going forward. That's fine. But would want just a little insurance if I'm planning to start Warren or Loveland.
Yeah, I mean, I like Loveland a lot as a prospect analytically, and I just think with Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams, and could be a top 10 passing offense, and I mean, DJ Moore, it seems like he might be on his way out potentially. We'll see if Luther Burden works out. I mean, Loveland was taken above Tyler Warren too, and handpicked by Ben Johnson, who, could be a great OC. But definitely understand your rationale. I think Warren's probably the better bet for this year.
And price for this guy. Shockingly, the guys that you're drafting in the rookie draft in the mid to late first, we have the cash price as a mid to late first. JP, talk to me a little bit about cross positional target.
Yeah, I could definitely see a world where you trade one of these rookie tight ends if you're contending. And I mean, you might need a running back, and you'd be looking at guys like RJ Harvey, who went in the same range of rookie drafts. You got Chase Brown, who was the hammer at the end of last year. If you're looking for a wide receiver, not going to be able to get one of those like real high end wide receivers anymore, but Xavier Worthy and Mecca Egbuka, these are the targets that you could go for. Like I said, with Harvey, Egbuka went that same range. Just like the David's trade with Justin, it was right there. And if you're looking for a quarterback, you're looking at guys in the range of Bryce Young and Dak Prescott.
Yeah, I think this is probably a problem that a lot of more people will have than in the first two tiers. Like you get a tier one guy, probably really not looking to trade him unless your roster really demands it. You have Kittle, again, like we talked about how hard he is to trade on a contender. But maybe you lucked into one of these tight ends, these rookie tight ends fell to you at 111 or 201 or something, and you didn't really need a tight end. And the guy that needed a tight end but was locked out of the draft has one of these guys. Like I think this might actually happen a lot more often than the previous slides. But there's a ton of players in this range. We just picked a couple here just to give some examples, but pretty much all those rookies, you probably, Kenneth Walker, James Cook probably could be in that RB mix. But yeah, just, anybody in these ranges, if you're looking to move off the tight end, I think this is a pretty effective way to do so.
And looking at tier up, again, we already talked about, we're looking at probably a second to tier up or a 2-3 swap. I personally probably don't want to pay to tier up off of the rookies to Kittle if the team is rebuilding because of how close their ADP is. I think I'm just selling it as a match for both of us, but definitely could understand having to pay that if you are buying it from a contender. So it just depends on that situation. And potentially a tier 4 player plus a second. Kind of tough for me to do that because I feel like I'm turning a first into 2 quarters. But I think that is probably about all you could get to tier down if that's what you're looking to do. And go ahead and introduce us to those tier 4 players briefly, David.
Yeah, Packers tight end and breakout star of this season, Tucker Kraft. Maybe not. I hope he gets the volume to do so. He's electric with the ball in his hands. David Njoku, who's just time after time producing, and we just don't give him the respect he deserves. Kind of the same thing for Evan Ingram there. Love what his fit could be with the Broncos. Mark Andrews definitely is a tough one to value. He had 6 games with 2 targets or less last year. Very touchdown dependent, only 4.1 targets per game. He was top 10 in 10 out of the 17 weeks he played. So I don't know. He's a tough one for me. I love the other 2 veterans in this, and I love the upside of Kraft. But pretty strong tier if you get locked out of the elite guys, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, David Njoku, tight end 4 last year in points per game and tight end premium. So he was really good. Mark Andrews, he overproduced in touchdown category by a lot. J.J. Zacharyson pointed this out. Just the touchdown over expectation. He was way over it. So if that comes down, he could be in trouble. But he's always kind of been a pretty good touchdown scorer. So I think it's at least in the range of outcomes that he's still a good tight end again. We saw the first 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, he was not good. But then after that point, yeah, he was one of the best tight ends that you could have held outside of the tier 1 guys. And Evan Ingram, I mean, I feel like we're kind of forgetting about him a little bit. If you look back just 1 year, he was tight end 3 in points per game. So I think he could be due for a bounce back. We'll have to see how he fits with Sean Payton and Bo Nix and everybody there. But yeah, I think he's a pretty good bounce back candidate. And this is a tier that I really like, honestly.
Yeah, this is the last range in a startup that you kind of feel comfortable sliding in, where you feel like if this is my guy all year, I don't really need to draft another tight end. I might still if I like the value, but I feel like I have my starting tight end locked down for this season. And because of that, we're willing to kind of pay up a little bit. We have that cash price as an early to mid second. It just depends on your league. And do you know what my preference for these guys is, David? Any guess?
The cheapest one.
My man, you know it. I think I'm taking whoever I can get cheapest out of this at price. If I had to list them, if I had to rank them, I probably would do it pretty similar to the order in the graphic there. No huge preference between Ingram and Andrews. JP, go ahead and talk to us a little bit about cross-positional trades.
Yeah, I think I have some leagues where I have 2 of these guys or one of the rookies and one of these guys. We did one of the rookies we discussed. So I think you could be looking to move one of these guys for a running back like Joe Mixon, Jefferson, Chuba Hubbard. At wide receiver, you're looking at guys like Luther Burden, who is right in that range of rookie drafts, mid to early second, typically early second, I think. Then you got Jerry Jeudy as well, priced right around there. I think you could throw a guy like Chris Godwin in there as well. And at quarterback, you're looking at Justin Fields and Jackson Dart. So these are the quarterbacks that are no longer really worth a first. Dart did go to the end of first in some rookie drafts, but yeah, that's kind of the range we're looking at.
You definitely see some people saying those RB targets might be a little high based on ADP in that David's pulling from Dynasty Daily Lab. They're in the neighborhood there. I think we're pretty happy though, based if you go back to our RB tier video, taking a Montgomery type, taking other running backs that we think are worth an early to mid second. So some of those other similar tiered Alvin Kamara type of running backs as well. So sub in the names, check the RB video. I think that's the advice we'd give, right, David?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I like to aim high too. I don't want to, I look around at who's around there and I think to myself, who would I most want to trade for? At least that's what I was doing here. And not that I love Mixon, but if you're getting Mixon for one of these tight ends and you've got a need at running back, like that's a smash. That's great play. So yeah, and the quarterbacks, honestly, I could see valuing both of them as a late first, early second instead of early second, mid second. But again, let's aim high. And if we got to add a little plus to get a guy we like, or if, they say no and then we move on down the list, that's Dynasty. That's what we do, right?
100%. Again, we mentioned tier up price of a second. I'm pretty happy adding a second to one of these guys to get one of those rookies or Hawkinson. I'd love to try to do that if I could, and I don't think it's an early second. And then tiering down to a tier 5 player for a third. And let's look at those tier 5 players next. JP, if you can read those for us briefly, and we'll see how interested we are in tiering down to these guys.
Yeah, this is where the podcast almost broke. I was a little MIA at work, and you guys had quite the debate about who was going to be in tier 5 versus 6. But what we decided on here for tier 5 is Isaiah Likely, Dalton Kincaid, Kyle Pitts, and Travis Kelce. It's quite an interesting tier.
Yeah, we talked a lot about this one. David, go ahead and start us off with your case for this tier being separate.
Yeah, I think one thing we can all agree on is there's a lot of ADV here. A lot of artificial value. I don't think any of us believe in the younger players here, the three, Likely, Kincaid, Pitts, but it's just hard to deny the fact that some people do believe in them. You might be able to sell them now for more than anybody in tier 6, but certainly if any of them get off to a hot start, you might even be able to squeeze a first out of someone for these. So that's, to me, that was the main reason. Like, I agree with Justin, who's going to make a case here soon about how none of these guys or the guys in tier 6 really matter at all. They're all about the same guy. Like, he posted the office meme where it's the same picture, So it is the same picture, except one of these pictures is worth quite a bit more than the other picture. So like if you can find the right buyer, to me, that's the main reason. And then Kelce, kind of, you also have, it's an outside shot, but you do have an outside shot that he could put another top 5-ish year in him. When he was, tight end 6 in points per game, tight end 5 in total points last year. He was 3rd in the NFL in targets. 3rd among tight ends, in targets, 4th in targets per game. We see a ton of declining metrics. I will say, though, he only had 3 touchdowns. So maybe he declines a little more, but gets some positive regression on his touchdowns. Maybe he's right in that tight end 4 to 7 range again, and paying this price we're talking about here for tight end 4 to 7 for 1 year, that's worth it. So I don't know, I think he's a little different, but there's still some artificial value there.
And that price we are talking is a late second, early third, and I think at that price point, like I was saying, in non-tight end premium in our discussions, in a non-tight end premium league, I am smashing any future second for Kelce. Like, I'm shipping that out. I'm going to be shipping that out over the next week or two in the leagues where I own him, just because I think it's good process, and I wouldn't bet on him to be a difference maker, even if he does produce in that 4 to 7 tight end range. That very well could be historically is typically non-difference making point, or could be potentially difference making if you're, really trying to get into it. But statistically speaking, not likely to happen. So very happy to take that cash price of a second. Not that happy to take a third for any of these guys. And I don't think you're getting any of these guys for a third. People are just really high on him. But I think that probably they're where their value is going to sink into, unless I almost think we're forecasting the price here, and I'm not upset with that. I think this is the price if they don't do what they need to do to convince Dynasty players otherwise, right? Likely might be the exception to that, because all that he needs to do to have a big jump in value is nothing. He just needs something to happen to Andrews' contract, trade, cut, yada, 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 right? Or conversely, get extended. So interesting on those cash prices. I think the cash price is higher. We all acknowledge this, but this is probably more our comfortable price to buy them. So we're probably not getting them. JP, you want to talk cross positional or add anything to that conversation first?
Yeah, I just don't know how Isaiah Likely's ranked as like a top 10 dynasty tight end. Like, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I mean, I know last year he showed flashes. I will say that there is upside there. There's rumors that Andrews would be released, traded. Isaiah Likely's also in a contract year, so maybe he gets a new fun destination. I'm not exactly sure, but yeah, let's look at cross positional here. Looking at guys like DeAndre Swift. I don't know if you can get Cam Scatabo. Maybe if somebody really likes Kelsey or something, but I Scatabo a little higher. But I'd probably say like Isaiah Pacheco, Brian Robinson would be in this range. At wide receiver, looking at guys like Josh Downs, Cortland Sutton. I think those guys probably about a mid to late second. But at quarterback, we're looking at Geno Smith, Matt Stafford. I definitely agree with that. Yeah, I don't know, David, about the wide receivers. I think it might be shooting a little high, but I know you said you like to shoot a little bit high.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly going with Dynasty Data Lab ADP. Maybe we come up with another way to source these, ideas. But Scatabo is right in between Kincaid and Pitts, who are the top two, according to Dynasty Data Lab, in this tier. So I agree. Maybe it's not quite as realistic. Maybe we just need to spend a little more time looking for realistic options that also line up with ADP. But, it doesn't hurt to try. And if that's how the ADP is falling, that means that thought exists out there. So you might find the right match. But, I think we're also pretty down on tight ends. And this is using tight end premium. The ADP from Dynasty Data Lab is pretty cool. You can set that. So I have it set to as high as I can go with 1.5 tight end premium. So that does factor in a little bit, but I agree. In reality, I'm probably not trading the players that I have listed there for these tight ends, in part because I don't like these tight ends, and also in part because if I'm trading for a tight end, I either want a cheaper one who's going to score the same, or I want a more expensive one who's going to provide me real value and real positional advantage. I just don't really like this tier.
And talking about tiering up, a third to get up to tier 4, I'm pretty happy to pay that from these guys. I prefer any of those guys in a third very easily, and I think that is viable. I think it's pretty easy to, if you have a Kincaid, if you have maybe not a Likely, you need the guy to be a likely believer. If you have someone who hasn't been burned by Pitts that owns anybody in tier 4, I think you could pretty easily do that. And possibly with Kelsey as well. I think he has artificial dynasty value as well, even though his whole value is based off of 1 year of production just because of his name. There's always the Kelsey name value there. And then tiering down to a tier 6 player for a third, I would smash doing that because I think tier 5 and tier 6 should be one tier. JP, do you mind reading that tier for us? And then I'm going to go off on a tirade. I'm going to go off a tirade. It's going to be ugly. You guys should be excited.
No, I definitely understand that. I just think it might be a late third would probably be like the tier down price.
I'd put a 3-4 swap in there as well, maybe. Fourths don't motivate me to do anything, so I didn't want to put a fourth because I don't care.
And if you put a fourth, you would have had to admit they should all be in the same tier too.
It was really close. It was the market value. Like you said, Justin, you might be able to get some interesting players with I can't remember what players you just mentioned, but I need to listen, I guess. But no, you were talking about people might still believe in Pitts and Kincaid. You can get up to that tier 4, pretty cheaply. I don't think you can quite do that with this tier. Maybe some of the rookies off of excitement, but the rookies here we have are Terrence Ferguson, Mason Taylor, and Elijah Arroyo. And we've got some guys that are a little bit older here with Jake Ferguson, Dallas Goedert, and Brenton Strange. A very, very interesting tier. The tight ends, you might have seen them go anywhere from 206 to 304 or so. But I think as talents, we see them pretty similarly. It's just that the market's a little higher on Mason Taylor because he's got opportunity and was drafted just a little bit higher. And Ferguson's attached to Sean McVay there. But I've recently seen Jake Ferguson get some hype because he's got the most missed tackles for us over the last 2 years. So, but he's probably going to be the third target on his team there.
Yeah, to me, these are just the last guys that I think we expect to really have any potential, like climbability, dynasty value, gainability. I don't think we really expect any of these guys to necessarily be difference makers. Obviously, any of these rookies could be. You never know. There's a path, right? They're rookies. They're shiny new toys. But everyone else, I just think they have the ability to climb and produce enough. It's fine. It's fine. And I kind of that's what I think about the guys above is they have the ability to climb. But I'd expect these guys to either rookies maintain value better than tier 5, and the veterans down here, I'd probably bet on them to outproduce everyone outside of Kelsey in the tier above us and probably be in the league just a little bit longer. So it's the same picture would be my argument again. And that picture costs an early to mid third.
I do want to apologize. If you noticed an issue on the last slide, there was a mistake. I'll fix it. We'll get the graphic better going forward. I won't point it out, but it's there. And once you see it, it hits you like a brick truck. Brenton Strange, he does not play for the Raiders. I used Brock Bowers' card to duplicate and make, do the sizing. And so I just forgot to change the logo. But anyways, I just wanted to point that out in case somebody at home was watching and thought that I was an idiot. I get that some of these values weave between each other, and like Mason Taylor goes in the mid-second, so cash price probably more than an early third. I get that. This is about where these guys are going, especially when you factor in the veterans. I don't think we know enough about the rookies that I want to put them as the same level of dart throw as the guys before them, but they are probably the same. I don't deny that. It's really just an argument of value, and it's kind of the opposite argument that we were on opposite sides of this argument for tier 2 with George Kittle, which is weird to me because we both flipped completely. And my reasoning for flipping is that I acknowledge the value difference and its importance, but with George Kittle, he does provide a positional advantage. Here with these guys, there is a market difference, but I just don't care about any of these guys enough to ignore the market difference like I do with Kittle. That's my whole point. But I agree. I'm not going to fight too hard if you want to put these guys with tier 5, all of them, some of them, none of them. I don't, they probably are the same guy at the end of the day.
And for me, it's just that market difference here is minuscule in like what you'd have to add to get between these guys. Even if you're like looking at startup round, what you'd have to add to move up from like round 13 to round 11 or 10 or whatever. It's not a big deal, right? But if you're looking at like that startup ADP from Laporta, going back to that argument versus Kittle, you probably need to add a first to a 6th round pick to get up to a 3rd round pick. That's a deal that I pretty frequently get done in startup, going from the 3rd to the 6th. People are usually willing to pay that to get there. You get Kittle, you pocket a first. That's probably a better way to build a team than to try to trade up to 3rd. I'm not advocating for, Laporta as a target there. I definitely would prefer Kittle at price to Laporta at price, and it's not really close, but that price isn't in the same place that Laporta's going,
I get that, but neither is the scoring.
Yeah, I think that's my thing is I probably value Laporta in like the mid to late 4th and Kittle on about the 5th. So, but the market doesn't.
And these guys here, we like them. We think that the market typically also likes a handful of these guys, either in the rookie drafts, they're drafted around some guys, or in startups, they're drafted around some guys cross-positionally. And who are those cross-positional targets, JP?
Yeah, if you're looking to add a running back, you're looking at guys in the range of Tony Pollard and Bashal Tutin, who we joked was the 210, but I saw him going some early 3rds. Wide receiver, you're looking at like Juwan Jennings. Keon Coleman, has he fallen to that range? That's probably where I value him, but so I won't push back too much. Quarterback, you're looking at a guy like Jalen Milroe and Tyler Shuck, who went in a lot of early 3rds of rookie drafts.
And to tier up, we're looking at 3rd, 3-4 swap, maybe something if you do view it as different tiers. I don't think any of us are really, I think we're aiming higher for tiering up. You guys agree? They nodded for the podcast listeners. And to tier down to tier 7, which we do not have a graphic for tier 7. We're going to go ahead and remove our tier 6 graphic from the phase and just talk about tier 7 a little bit. But to tier down to tier 7, 3-4 swap. Tier 7 for us, we did not make a graphic for it because it's basically everybody left. Name a name who's a starting tight end. He's there. Body with the pulse. Hunter Henry, Donner Smith at this point, Mike Gesicki, everybody else. Because we don't really see value ceilings for any of these guys. Again, we talked about guys we thought could gain value. We don't think these guys can. Any real comments on tier 7 or just how we're approaching these barrel bin tight ends?
I think the one guy that might be interesting to just give a quick take on, if you guys have one, Ben Sinnott. We were all high on him last year. We thought he might be taking over for Ertz this year. I'm not sure that happens. He really did not impress rookie year. We still holding on any hope? You guys getting out for anything you can? What's the thought process here with him?
Yeah, I mean, I know that tight ends, we all know that tight ends can take some time. I just think the whole, like, him being like a fullback and not being quite as involved as a receiver, I didn't see enough flashes really to get all that excited. I really don't see him pulling a Trey McBride, honestly. And I think Jatavian Sanders, I see him pretty similarly. Harold Fannin, Rondé Gadsden, like, at that point, I'm not that opposed to valuing them differently.
Yeah, I mean, Sinnott's interesting. It's fine. I've heard a lot of people make cases for, well, Jaden Daniels just went to the first read, so the low yards per route run could be a lot because of that, and he'll go through progressions more in a second year. It's a dart throw. It's fine. I prefer a 3rd to him, but I've taken him in trades in lieu of a 3rd when the other team did not have a 3rd to tack on, because he's fine. All these guys are fine. Fannon's fine. And then the veterans are also, they're fine. They're tight ends.
I sure hope Gadsden is more than fine. I have him on too many teams. And I love the praise he's getting. I'm going to try to sell him for some 3rds here soon.
Dynasty Zoltan I think he at one point posted something along the lines of that he's going to outscore Omarion Hampton, but maybe it was somebody else. If it is, I apologize. There's a lot of Gadsden love on Twitter, but realistically, he's probably just fine. All tight ends are probably just fine.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have Jonnu Smith coming into tier 7 and Fryermuth too. I think Fryermuth would have been in our tier 6 at least if Jonnu wasn't there. So through Arthur Smith again, because we were actually debating about putting Jonnu in tier 4. Justin, you're kind of pushing, like, I mean, his points per game was so impressive that he's got to be in consideration for even tier 4. So he would have been in our top 5 tiers for sure if it had not been for that trade. And thankfully, we recorded after that because that would have stunk if we recorded and then a trade happened the day later.
Pretty out on him now. We loved the production he was getting in Miami. The Walrus could be fine. I'm not paying for it. I paid a lot of fab for it. Love burning fab where it doesn't reset for him. But at this point, we're too late to give you advice on fab for it. They're tight ends. Let us know in the comment below anything you thought we got wrong. Would love that feedback on the graphics, etc. Anything else. If you liked us putting Raiders logo for Brenton Strange, let us know that as well. So thank you for joining us for another episode of the Dyno Construction Podcast. We hope you found this as helpful for you as it was for us. Please remember to like and subscribe wherever you listen or review. And from all of us here at the Dyno Construction Podcast, until next time.